Anyway, so let's go on with the next part. There are 3 parts altogether. Let's go with the second one. Okay, so really, after what you've heard in the first part, Noah is a bit of a weirdo. We're going again in a totally different direction to the rest of the people, okay? Everybody's omega-3 is here, and Noah is there. We're just doing things differently. Because in average, if we look the overall market, we've got still many fish oil products which has 30% fish oil as omega-3, but on average, the market we can find, say, in Turkey and in other countries, at the most, is going to work around about these figures now. And also, most products have EPA and DHAs always together in the soft gel. And in these products where you have both of them together, in the majority of cases, people tend to have more EPA than DHA. So really, Noah went against the flow. And often people ask, well, how did you do it? How did we produce this oil? So I'm just going to give you a very simple and quick explanation, okay? This is very, very simple. But anyway, in nature, fish oil, the maximum amount of omega-3 they can accumulate in their fat is 30%. So if we add the amount of DHA and EPA, maximum omega-3 in nature, 30%. In nature, no fish has 90% omega-3. Okay, that's not the case. It is true that some fish, like for example anchovies, in their oil, they tend to have more EPA than DHA, whilst tuna fish tends to have a bit more DHA than EPA. So that's true. But the total amount will add up around about 30%. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, we know that our omega-3, say the green is EPA, blue DHA, they come in nature as a triglyceride form, which is a car where you can fit in 3 passengers, okay, the triglyceride. And that's how all the fats, the majority of the fats we eat come in the food matrix. So what we do is we first take some scissors, an enzyme, a lipase, to separate from the car the passengers, the fatty acids. So I chop that, and now I have a soup of fatty acids. And then what I do is my car, I take it to my garage here, and I leave the red car for later on, okay? So now I have what we call free fatty acids. Now, when you have free fatty acids, then in the industry, they do a process called molecular distillation, which probably some of you have heard about before. Now, what they do is molecular distillation means that each of these fatty acids is going to be linked to an alcohol molecule, just temporary, okay? Just for a short time. Because as you know, when you produce high degree alcohol, you need to use distillation. So distillation is all to do with alcohol. So through molecular distillation, each of these fatty acids is attached to an alcohol molecule, and then we put it in these machines, molecular distillation, and with each cycle of molecular distillation, we can concentrate more and more the fatty acids. So instead of 30%, as we go through cycles, we get 40, 50% omega-3, as many cycles. Obviously, there are lots of patents on how to do this because you need to control a lot the physical parameters and chemical parameters as to not damage the DHA and EPA. So that's a science behind which we're not going to talk about. But so basically, molecular distillation enables me to really, really concentrate the oil as far as I want, okay? Then you say, okay, now I have a soup with loads of fatty acid, but EPA and DHA are still together. Now I have a very concentrated soup of EPA and DHA, but I want to separate them. How do I do them? Well, it's kind of easy in a way. We use chromatography columns. This is based on weight. DHA has a different weight than EPA. So if you put somebody who's really heavy and throw him down a column, and somebody who's really light, who's going to reach the ground sooner? The heaviest will reach the bottom first, and the lighter one will come afterwards. So science knows that. So science knows that if we put this soup of concentrated oil through this column, they know at which moment in time the oil coming out is going to be based on weight, DHA or EPA. So they know how to separate the fractions, okay? Some firms, once they do that, they take that EPA and DHA, which is still in that alcohol molecule, united, and they put it directly to a soft gel and they sell it. Those are omega-3 as ethyl ester, which I mentioned earlier, where you could only fit one occupant in a little tiny car. But nature, our pancreatic system, doesn't really know how to, separate that passenger from that car, from that alcoholic car. So bioavailability is 35% lower, okay? So this is something to consider. That's why ethyl ester products are much cheaper than triglyceride ones, okay? So some people decide after this just to put the oil inside a soft gel, and that's the end of the story, okay? But in NUA, we don't want that. We want to be close to nature. How? Okay, we separate with some enzymes, we separate EPA and DHA that are now we have like a soup, a concentrated soup of DHA and a concentrated soup of EPA, but they still are linked to that alcohol molecule. I don't want the alcohol molecule. So with some enzymes, which are like scissors, we separate them again. So now I have loads of fatty acids of DHA and of EPA on their own, free. So I go back to my garage where I left my red car before, and with another enzyme, I sit them back in the original car. So I take, that's my DHA, that's my EPA, and I sit them in the car. So it's back a triglyceride. In fact, it's called reconverted triglyceride. So that's how we move from a 30% to almost 90%. So obviously, you need to do something, but the main thing is that the actual DHA and EPA are identical to nature. Nothing has been altered in the molecule. So we just use certain techniques to be able to, reach the level of concentration that we are looking for. Okay? Roughly, this is how it works. Okay? So this is the family of NUA now here in Turkey. All our products have the word NUA. NUA means new in Gaelic, from Ireland, the Gaelic language, NUA. So every product has the word NUA as part of the name, and the actual label tells you the amount of DHA or EPA that there is in it soft gel, okay? Like NUA DHA 1000 has at least 1,000 milligrams of DHA, although we know from the IFOS analysis that we do with every batch, we know that normally there's more DHA than that. There's 1,100, 1,080, because animals, fish are not machines, so they are not like robots that they accumulate exactly the same amount of DHA always. Depending on the season when you fish, then it could vary. So there's always more than 1,000, okay? You can check it with the IFOS analysis. Now, this is a lemon chewable format, which is half the amount. So 2 soft gels of 500 are the same as 1 soft gel of 1,000, okay? This, the actual soft gel is like a little bottle. The oil inside, it has a lemon flavor, and the actual soft gel is always like lemony flavor. It's like a bit of a gummy type of thing. So you can eat it all if you want. You just start chewing, and it explodes, and then you can feel the oil with the lemon flavor, but also the cover is going to release lemon flavor, and then you can eat it all. Or no, perhaps somebody doesn't want to take the cover, so you can just cut it and empty the lemon oil in a bit of yogurt or whatever, and just take it. So you can do whatever, or you can swallow it if you want. So that's the 60 caps. This big capsule, some people, you can ask, it's fairly big, but it's kind of easy to swallow, but I agree that when you see it for the first time, you say, "Oh, this is big," you know. But it's not so. It's sanitary accepted, the size of soft gel, so you can just cut the tip of the soft gel, if you want, and you can mix it with a bit of, I don't know, bit of lemon yogurt or any other thing to take it. So you don't, if you don't want to swallow it, it's not a very strong fish smell, but still is a flavor. But you can do that. Even some people now, what they do is in the middle of a meal, they get a glass of water and they just put a little base of water and they empty the oil, and you just drink it all at once. And the oil just travels on top of the water and slides through the mouth, and it hardly stops in your, in your mouth, and you don't feel much the taste. Okay, so there are many options to take it. And as far as EPA is concerned, this is the big cup, the big soft gel, which has 1,200. Okay, it has more, yeah, and this is a tiny one as well. So this is like, so going back to my initial explanation about nutritional dose and physiological dose. Small capsules, below 1 gram, this would be a nutritional dose. So I take this and I won't notice anything, okay? However, I can also use this as a nutritional dose. How? Well, I could take 3 a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So on average, if you divide by 7 days, the amount you're getting is below 1,000. So there are many ways of dealing with that. But I'm going to explain how to use it, obviously, now. So these are the products, so you know them. And this is an example of the IFOS report I was telling you before, okay? So any of you who gets a batch of Nuo, they can go in the web, go to the IFOS website, and you can get for different batches. This is the part of the label in Turkey. The product, the Turkish labels, that's what the information they have. But often you see that there might be a bit more, like, the amount of omega-3 might be slightly higher than what it says there, okay? But as I say, the label shows the minimum that the product would guarantee, but there might be some more, okay? And as you can see here, they measure the different heavy metals, and it says below 0.0200 parts per million, because the technique cannot measure below that figure. So then they leave that, because there's no machine that can measure 0.000,000. So, but actually there's no, and this is total oxidation, they call the TOTOX value, like in this product is 1005, and IFOS demands 19.5, okay? So the WHO organization allows up to 30 TOTOX oxidation value, but IFOS is far more restrictive. Maximum they allow is 19.5. So like this batch is 1005. So, and that's just PCV, so on. So for each batch, you get a summary report along this line, So this is the same with DHA. Here you can see, for example, it says, according to the label, it should have 1,000 DHA, but this one had 1,001, it had more. Well, I cannot control that because fish are more, but normally they have 1,100, 80, so on. No? Okay, so this is the same example again, but with DHA, 1,000, and it will be with the lemon chewable, okay? So this is something that in Spain we found that people, users, feel really easy about it because like when they give to kids, small children and all this, making sure that they're so clean, they seem to, people like this. So this is a bit of a summary of what NUA's omega-3 are, okay? So basically, we've achieved a maximum concentration in omega-3 around about this range per soft gel. By using the triglyceride, the bioavailability is the highest there is, okay? We used most of the fish source is anchovy from the Pacific in the Peruvian waters, and they all come from sustainable fisheries, okay? We're not going to be fishing when there is a fish shortage, so that's very much control, okay? And as an alternative source, if there was ever any need, in the Indic, we can have tuna fish, okay? But mainly we use anchovy. This is part of the process I mentioned earlier for the extraction. By having DHA and EPA in different soft gels, you have a tailor-made solution because it's like you can design a suit for each person. What shall I give him? Shall I give them this or that? And by being separated, you are more agile on the things you can do. Okay, as mentioned earlier, well, there are no saturated fats, trans fat or cholesterol, and there isn't vitamin A or D because, like for example, cod liver oil, which is very popular, is often rich in vitamin A and D, which is really good when you have respiratory problems and so on. But personally, giving fat-soluble vitamins on a controlled way, I wouldn't like that because they are going to accumulate in your body. So I'd rather not have any fat-soluble vitamins. And if you want to have them now and again, just go and get a food supplement with just A and D directly. So there's no AID either. As mentioned earlier, there's no fish protein, none of these contaminants, no oxidation, and the amount of DHA is guaranteed. These are the certification we've got. And in Spain, we've run various in different areas. We've run like trials with our oils, which we've published either in an American, Spanish journals. And and we've used it for over 16 years in Spain. So we've seen it perform, and the safety profile is really, really good, okay? And what about secondary effects, which is something really important, which we need to take into account? What possible things could happen when I take an omega-3 product? Well, loosen stools. This is very rare, okay? This is not normal. But some people might. But if somebody has that problem, but as I say, it's not something, in 16 years we've hardly seen this, but it could be that somebody has this problem. It often happens with people that have gallbladder problems. Somebody with gallbladder problems is going to have a problem with the fat digestions. That's normal. So it's not the problem of DHA or EPA, it's just that they're taking a fat, okay? But as I say, we haven't really encountered that over the years. Fishy aftertaste, it's very rare. When you work with such pure products, it's very rare. But the few cases where we've seen this is mainly people who had an underlying gastritis, hiatus hernia, people who had some kind of alteration in the digestive system, not necessarily something serious, but who seem to have an aftertaste, not only perhaps with fish oil, but with a coffee or with other foods. So if people have that kind of aftertaste with more than one food, the problem is not the food, but the person, that his digestion perhaps might not be so perfect, okay? Now, what about coagulation? This is a very important issue, and people are really concerned about coagulation with omega-3. Now, according to the European Food Safety Authority, to EFSA, and this is published, EFSA has lots of scientific committees, and they always research different areas to do with supplements, and after they've done a thorough research, they publish what they call scientific statements for all of us to know where the safety profiles are. And it says that, according to EFSA, no significant increase in bleeding in healthy subjects up to 5 grams of omega-3, okay? So EFSA says a healthy subject can take 5 grams of omega-3 and there'll be no coagulation problems. We're talking about healthy people, okay? But this is, and there are more papers that say this, okay? However, you should know that both EPA and DHA have a moderate anticoagulant effect, because as you know, clots forms in veins, okay, and antiplatelet effect. So we have the veins and the arteries, and in both places we can get some kind of lumps that are going to block the flow, but they're different lumps. In the veins we get thrombus, and they are formed by red blood cells that stick together, and they block the pass of, okay? But in arteries, what we get are white thrombus, because they are platelets that get together, okay? So it's different. That's why we have antiplatelet or anticoagulant. Although both DHA and EPA have a mild anticoagulant and antiplatelet effect, it's not significant. So it's not going to alter a coagulation drastically. However, in those people who take in antiplatelet medication already because they are cardiovascular patients, okay, according to several studies, below 3 grams, in the majority of cases, they can take both the omega-3 and the drug, and there's no problem. However, I have identified some papers where they say that EPA in high concentrations, around about 3 grams or more, if you take it with these drugs, it might, in some instances, slightly increase the bleeding time, although not in a significant manner. So if you want to play things in the safe side, there's no need to go mad with the dose. Just stick to 2 EPA or alternate one day to another one, you know, and that should be fine. We had people taking 2 of our EPA soft gel, no problem with the medication, okay? So, and this is just more of an anecdote we've seen in Spain, which is a really weird thing, but we've seen it over the last 16 years in like 5 or 6 kids. The mother calls Noah and says, "Oh, my kid smells to fish. His hair is really fishy." And he goes to school and everybody says how smelly you are. And I've been washing his hair. Now, this is a very weird thing to see, but just in case I mention it. And this is nothing to do with the product. Some, especially in kids, and especially the very active running, which is most of the kids, they get really sweaty running, and they produce lots of volatile molecules from the omega-3 they've taken. And they kind of work, you know, they smell fish, and no matter how much you wash their hair, you know, it's a bit of a... So mothers, and there was this mother who gave me the trick, and she told me, "I found the solution." You know, "Oh, really? Tell me, because I've got 5, you know, people in 16 years, but it'd be interesting to know." And what they did is, she used to give the omega-3 with dinner, okay, the last meal of the day, which meant that the boy went to, or the girl went to sleep, and whilst they were asleep, the volatile molecules were released in the room, and by morning, the smell was gone. Okay, so just so you know. Most likely it won't happen, but if it does happen, so you know. And finally, combining omega-3 with statins, there is a huge synergy. People who are under statins have better cardiovascular outcomes if you take them together with omega-3. Okay, so that's, and actually, omega-3 makes statins like more powerful, but although statins tend to sort of put down omega-3, okay? But that combination is really powerful, and there's more and more in the literature about that, okay? So you know about it. And this is really, this part is kind of small, okay? I can carry on a bit longer, because now we're going to go in the really interesting thing. Come on, Mercedes, tell me, what the hell are we going to use this for? I want to know what's EPA good at, what's DHA good. So, but we first need to know, when I take one of my soft gel, how does it, you know, from the dish to the cell, how do we do it, okay? Let's see. So once again, here we have my car with my EPA, DHA, whatever. That's in my food, okay? Either in my food or in my soft gel, no soft gel I'm taking, okay? And as we know, it's a triglyceride. Okay, the 3 occupants in the car, okay? That's it. Well, after going through, during the digestive process, somehow, our digestive enzymes have to take the passengers out of the car. In fact, they take the 2 passengers, the one in this window and in this window, they go out of the car. And we absorb them. And then the car with the middle passenger goes in as well. There's no need to separate that one. That seems to go easily inside, okay? Anyway, they travel around, you know, the blood and everything, and eventually they reach our cell. As you know, cells separate the inside from the outside through a cell membrane, which you can see here, okay? And cell membrane, if you remember from, you know, it's formed by a bilayer of phospholipids. So as we mentioned earlier, a phospholipid is the same car with 2 occupants and a phosphorus. on one of the windows. So basically what the body does is, although we are taking these fatty acids as triglyceride, once we get to the cell, they take the car and they organize it as phospholipid, and they put it a biliary. This little ball will be the car, and these two little lines would be the fatty acids. So he puts them like that all the way, and he makes this big wall that separates the cell from the outside. So that's where our EPA and DHA are going to be located, okay? So whenever we take a food supplement or a meal, eventually every single cell of our body, in their external wall, the cell membrane, we're going to get the fats we eat. And this is an important thing to remember. Okay, now, so I like to think of this membrane like a castle wall. Just imagine that this here is like a Lego, you know, when you play with, and you see different colors. This is orange, yellow. We could say yellow is oleic acid from olive oil. If we had a red brick, it could be arachidonic acid. A green brick is EPA. A blue brick is DHA. So all the fats we eat are going to build this wall, okay? And each fat has its color. So that's interesting. Now, what happens when we have in this wall EPA and DHA, especially DHA, is that in this wall there are lots of parking areas which are receptors. Because when a substance wants to enter the cell, you can't just enter as you. There has to be. There's a parking slot. There's a parking for cholesterol, for glucose, for insulin. Every single substance that wants to get into my castle needs to first park in the right place. And once the cell recognizes it, say, okay, you can come in, off you go, and they go inside. But the social relationships of a cell are very much determined by the quality of the fat that we have in this wall, because if in this fat we get plenty of saturated fat or trans fat, this wall becomes really rigid and we have problems parking our cars. But if we have EPA, especially DHA, EPA, DHA, so polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are really flexible, they give lots of flexibility to that membrane, so it's far easier to pack. So basically, depending on the quality of the fats that we have in our diet, the social relationships of those cells with the environment will be better or worse. So, and that's important because one cell is one cell, but a group of cells is a tissue, and a group of tissue is an organ. So problems in health always start from small to big, okay? So this is something to consider. Now, there is a possibility of running a blood test. It is not a conventional blood test, okay, but which is called fatty acids in your membrane. They get the red blood cells, okay, which have these phospholipids, and here we'll have EPA, DHA, or any fat we've eaten, and they can analyze that. And whatever the composition is of your membrane, that's representative of the quality of your fatty meal, the kind of fatty food you receive, okay? And then with that data, you have certain values and ratios you can work out and measure how inflamed you are or how healthy or not you are on a cardiovascular basis. So there's very interesting data you can work out of this analysis, okay? So just so that you know, it's not, as I say, it's not a conventional measurement, but here in Turkey, in Istanbul, there are labs who can do this, okay? So you know. And these are some of the ratios we can work out with those analyses. Like a very popular one is called the Omega-3 index, which was developed by Dr. Harris, okay? That's why they also call it as the Harris Index. And this measures the amount of DHA and EPA in your cell membranes. So they say that if it's below 4%, that's bad. That's bad. You have a bad cardiovascular, you have high risk of having cardiovascular problems. If you have between 4 and 8%, you have medium risk of having cardiovascular problems. Oh, sorry, this is a spelling mistake. Above 8, that's a low risk, okay? Now, there's another ratio we can measure, which is arachidonic acid, okay? Which is that fat that we have so much in the brain, but that we eat so much. When we are adults, we have huge problems with arachidonic acid, which you're going to see later on when I explain inflammation, okay? Now, having a lot of arachidonic acid is not good news for anybody. So they make this ratio dividing the amount of arachidonic with EPA, and depending on the value, you see the cardiovascular risk that you might have. And then there's this other ratio as well. So there's many different numbers. There are lots of papers dealing with these numbers, so that gives you an idea of how you are. As far as we are talking about longevity and lifespan and everything, in connection with this omega-3 index, there seem to be some authors say that people who have beyond 8% omega-3 index, well, they can live longer, basically, you know. But, you know, just as a curiosity, there seem to be some studies in that direction, okay? And here comes now the big problem we have in our society, okay? Omega-6, when we talk about omega-6, okay, we're mainly going to talk about arachidonic acid, the one in the brain, but that it's so much present in our food. And what's the problem? Well, in theory, the ratio omega-6 to omega-3 in our membranes in the body should be every 3 or 4 of omega-6 per 1 of omega-3. Okay, that's the correct one. This should be right. This should be correct. But this has been measured using that analysis I told you. And there are loads of papers about it. And what do those papers say? That in industrialized countries, the ratio is 20 up to 40 omega-6 per 1 of omega-3. So it's totally offset. We eat too much arachidonic acid, okay? So this is a problem, as we're going to see now. Why? And here comes an interesting thing. This is a membrane, okay? A piece of membrane. And we're going to talk about inflammation, but I have made it so simpler to see with my castle, okay? So here you are. Okay, here we have our cell. That's a more fuzzy way of putting things. This is simpler. And I really want you to focus on this because I want you to realize that we are what we eat, okay? How? This is our castle. This person has arachidonic acid, comes from meat, fish, cheese, dairy products, bakery products, sauces. Oh, kebab is full of it, you know, you have in Turkey, you know, all the foods, there's plenty of arachidonic acid, okay? So that means we have loads of red bricks in my wall. Fair enough, because I eat loads of those things. I had some meatballs yesterday. Those had arachidonic acid, surely. So anyway, there they go. But I have in Turkey, you like to have a bit of, you know, olive oil. It's nice. So we do have some yellow bricks. Fair enough. But look, I'm starting to take. I like to take cold water fish. EPA is green. DHA is blue. Okay, so I also have some bricks that color. So when I eat those fats, they go to this wall, and for a while, they are part of that wall, of the structure of the cell. Good. But they are not. They don't stay there forever, because there's somebody there, these scissors, that go everywhere chopping things. Okay. So the glue between those bricks is broken. And these scissors release from our tower, from our castle. They are pushing those fats, those bricks, freeing them from the wall, okay? So now we've got our fat, our arachidonic acid, in a free state. And if you ever watch any film, medieval film with castles and so on, there's always a vulture going round in circles like a bird, going round, trying to see if they can catch anything, okay? So our vulture, there's a vulture there, which is COX, cyclooxygenase 1 and 2. If you study pharmacy, those are some enzymes, okay, that we have in our body. So I'll put them like vultures. It's easier. So we get a bricks, our fat, which has been released by these scissors, which is called the phospholipase A2. This enzyme is the one that's releasing the fats from my cell wall. So I release it there, and the vultures eat this fat. If I eat fat, I produce subproducts which are also fat. And which fatty subproducts do we produce from this, from arachidonic acid? Well, we produce prostaglandins and thromboxanes and leukotrienes, which are all inflammatory. So for those of you who are pharmacists, when somebody goes to your pharmacy asking for a ibuprofen, naproxen, I'm really painful, anti-inflammatory, you should realize that those drugs, what they do is kill this bird. This vulture, I shoot it down. So you stop producing this, so you feel better. So basically, when you take an anti-inflammatory drugs, they are trying to prevent the inflammatory products that our body produces because of the food we eat. The fatty food we eat has, especially arachidonic acid, because it's so much present in our food, is inflaming us. And if we have a person that already has an inflammatory condition, for whichever reason, if he keeps eating plenty of meat and sauces and cheese and everything, he's feeding the birds with more and more substrate to produce inflammation. So that person is going to need loads of anti-inflammatory drugs to block, to prevent from producing these substances. So corticoids, which are also very much used, how corticoids work many ways. But there's one thing they do. What they do is, these scissors here, they make them rotten. So instead of they work really bad. They try and stop them. So that means that we won't be releasing so much arachidonic acid. So there's less food for COX and LOX. Sorry, this is LOX. I've missed that. This is LOX. Here, LAX, I've missed that one. So this here won't be able to eat so much. So there's less inflammation. So there's different drugs that work differently, okay? So what do EPA and DHA do? Both EPA and DHA, the same as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they are capable of blocking the COX enzyme, which means that all these byproducts which generate inflammation won't be generated. So they do the same thing. However, there's a big difference. A drug will do that within half an hour, 20 minutes. EPA and DHA won't do it like that. EPA and DHA are no good for acute inflammation. If you need to, rescue somebody, you need to use pharmaceutical drugs. Omega-3 are no good. Omega-3 are good for people who live with chronic inflammatory conditions, because those people have that problem for many years, and they are constantly taking these medications. And by taking them for a long time, it means that they have secondary effects, the sugar levels, the calcium, my stomach. You know, in those instances, in chronic inflammatory conditions, you're better off with omega-3 or adding on omega-3 because it's going to enable you reducing the amount of inflammatory drug you're taking, okay? But let me finish with the story now. So this is EP and DHA will block this. This one is LOX. This is not a C, sorry, it's an L, LOX enzyme. So EPA can block LOX, which means that these fatty substances will stop being produced by taking EPA. DHA doesn't do that, but EPA has an effect there, okay? But also, these scissors don't differentiate what they chop. They just chop everything. So if I've taken EPA and DHA, they're going to release them free as well. And the birds are going to go and eat that as well. But the difference is that the byproducts produced by the bird when he eats EPA and DHA are extremely powerful anti-inflammatory substances, which your own body produces, which are called special pro-resolving mediators, which are resolving some protectins from the D series in case of DHA and resolving some protectins from the E series in case of EPA. In fact, these SPMs were discovered by Dr. Serham from Harvard University, which I met some years ago. He discovered them in the late 90s, early, yes, 99 or so. And now he's worked out all the chemical structure of these SPMs, and now they are currently working with each of the resolving and protectin from DHA and EPA. They're working out in lots of diseases the dose you have to give, and you know how to apply them, because it's in the medium term, the new anti-inflammatory drugs that you are going to be selling are going to be SPMs derived from D and E series. That's the future of anti-inflammatory drugs, the new generation that will be coming in the future. But for now, if I give the source, which is EPA and DHA, my body will produce them. So depending on the physiology of each person, some people will produce more SPMs than others. But what I've seen is that when you give 2 grams of either DHA or EPA, most people produce sufficient SPMs to notice the effect. Like in anti-inflammatory conditions, like our EPA, when you take 2 of EPA 1200, in arthritis, for example, it works wonders. In 1-2 weeks, people notice the effect already. So that means that by that time, the body of that person is producing these substances. So the one who's creating anti-inflammation is actually the byproducts that you manufacture with your body from EPA and DHA. Okay? And a little bit the inhibition that EPA and DHA do in these enzymes. Okay? So really, please take this into your mind. The food we eat can generate inflammation. And when we have people with chronic inflammatory conditions, first thing they should do is try and adjust their diet. Please try and eat less meat, less fat generally, because by doing that, you're going to have less bricks, red bricks in your cell membranes, and therefore less food for these vultures to create inflammation. I hope you've understood what I've meant, but anyway. So anyway, just to finish this round, to control inflammation, okay, normally in pharmacies, you're mainly going to be working with this, okay, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, okay, which try and fight against these fatty substances that the body produces from arachidonic acid and also corticoids. So in inflammation, we have fatty substances that inflame. But when we have inflammation, there are also proteic substances that inflame, which are called interleukins, and so on. Normally, you would use biological drugs or interleukin blockers or whatever. Okay, so when there is inflammation, there is fat inflammatory products mainly coming from the food we eat, from arachidonic acid, and protein mediators. Well, you should know, but there's no time to go into it, that omega-3, beside working in the fatty side of things, which I've just explained, they are really good at blocking inflammatory interleukins and tumor necrosis factor and so on, especially DHA. DHA is quite powerful, fighting inflammation coming from these substances, but I won't get into that, okay? So, I mean, we can stop whenever you want. This is not, yes. What about the Turkish diet? Well, I've been doing some reading, okay? And, well, cold water fish have a different tail than, well, it's whitefish than whitefish, okay? This one doesn't have that much omega-3, this has more. In Turkey, against Europe, fish consumption is not so high, okay? And you have plenty of whitefish. So, this is the map. This is a study published in 2016 measuring the omega-3 index of many countries, okay? Look, Turkey is in red. Doesn't look good, that. So, as I told you before, below 4% is bad news for your cardiovascular health. Between 4 and 8 is average. Above 8 is really good. And Turkey, amongst other countries, have below 4%. Okay? And this is the map. Like in Spain, we are in the middle. We are here, in orange, but Turkey is in red. So these countries have a really low, and they've studied with big sample sizes of people measuring on red blood cells. So just for your information, as I say, this paper, Chagri or anyone, we can pass you any of this. So I think it's interesting to see this. And now here comes magic. Okay, Mercedes, I was waiting to hear that. Okay, shall we wait that? I'll tell you what to use each one for, but we'll leave it there. That's for later on. Excellent. We have a break now, no? Excellent.